fired up for spring ball. First of all, just thank you guys again for coming and getting ready for spring ball and everything new. Really excited about 26. It's been a while since we finished up and talked last, but I know you guys talked to our 36 newcomers and had a chance to meet all those guys. Our 4 new coaches, fired up about them. I truly believe through the portal that we've got a better football team right now than we had last year. Just like last year, I knew we had a better football team than we had the year before. I can't say enough good things about just this incoming group of guys. I can't say incoming freshmen, but just the incoming group of players that we have in here, how they fit in, how our team has brought them into our family, and how hard they're working. I think we did a heck of a job in the portal of replacing guys for whatever reason. And, I'm excited really every spot. I don't have a list of all those guys, but I'm sure you'll ask me. And I think we nailed it. And I don't know if you guys talked about this in the past. I think if we brought in 16 new transfers, we brought in 18 on visits. And we got 16 out of the 18, but the 2 we didn't get, we didn't want. Okay, and one of the guys we didn't want was one of the first ones in there. I think sometimes coaches get desperate going, oh my God, we got all these spots open, and get desperate. The first guy we brought in, we didn't want. After spending time with him, was like, not our type of guy. And then we brought in one later on, I won't mention a position that we didn't want that ended up going to a Big Ten school, but I think we're really picky in who we take. And I think we make the right decision. I just think the way we evaluate, and that speed dating part is pretty critical. So, questions?
How is this portal process different than the years past where you've had 2 separate windows?
Well, it's totally different, having 2 windows as opposed to 1. So obviously fired up about just 1 portal window. So it's totally different. Hopefully that window shrinks down, is even smaller than it was this year. 5 or 10 days. I just don't think we need 15. The kids know where they want to go. It allows for more tampering to happen later, after those last 5 days when some of those schools don't get who they want. They start to, search and start to, have their people go out and reach out and say, hey, do you want to get in the portal? So the tampering gets bad the later it goes on. And I think if the NCAA is smart, they'll shut that window down just to eliminate the tampering. I think, the window a year ago, the first window was in December. They moved it to January. I think it's okay. Again, we'll manage it. It's just that's what we do as coaches is take a situation. Okay, this is the rules, and then we follow the rules and adjust it. So I think the December and January very similar as far as just the portal opening up and I think the hardest part is, and again, I thank our admissions people here at the University of Pittsburgh of working with us and getting people late and getting kids added to classes, because I don't think it's beneficial for the school part of it. I think it just puts a lot of people in a bind trying to get them into late to school. Missing a week of class is not easy. So that's about the biggest difference, is really when the kids can get here and start, and then obviously the 1 window.
Day 1 of spring, what do you look for on day 1 like this?
Looking to see how sharp we are. We've been out the last 3 Wednesdays, but you're looking for, Christmas. How crisp are you? We had 4 Wednesdays we've been out, so we've worked it. Our coaches have done a great job preparing our guys for first day, and you guys saw, I think, the first 5 or 6 periods today. Just looking for execution. And again, it's early, but we try to get 3% better every day. I said, really, some of you guys might get 6 to 8% better in one day. I mean, just watching that tape, especially some of the newer guys that go, oh, I see how it's done. I get it. Just looking for improvement every day.
During spring, let alone day 1 of spring, do you have starters right now, perceived starters? Just how do you approach, thinking about the early iterations of your depth?
Yeah, we've got starters, and we've got guys that are running with the ones, but that doesn't mean they'll be running with the ones tomorrow. We'll rotate guys around, but just trying to get reps. We're working 3 groups right now. We've got good numbers. That's the important thing is we've got good numbers. We've got to stay healthy through the spring so we can continue to get reps with the 1s, 2s, and 3s. Like Mason's our starter quarterback, right? We've got starters, and we got the 1s will go out there, and then those 2s are working to get in that starting group as well. So there's competition. And that was the first thing I talked today about in team meeting, is about competition. Every single day at every position is what we want.
You mentioned having good numbers. I remember last spring the running back room was really shorthanded, a lot of guys injured. What have you just maybe seen so far from having Saquon Smith back and Jaylen Brown back in the mix?
Yeah, I mean, matter of fact, Sinquan had a great catch at the end of a 2-minute drill at the end. But again, those guys are a year smarter and ready to go. I mean, Jalen hasn't practiced a whole lot. He's getting reps out there. We're still going to be careful with him. I don't think he's 100% yet, but we've got depth really at every position right now. I mean, I think that's the important thing. So there's not that one position like last year where we had 2 tailbacks, come in that were both hurt. Both those freshmen will get a lot of work this spring.
If you had to pick a guy or a few guys that have really jumped off the page early, who would you say and why?
Of any, you're talking transfers. In one day, or really, count the 3 days. I think our 2 outside linebackers, Alex Sanford and DeMarco, both have looked sharp out there. I mean, they're smart football players. Just the way we coach our linebackers, the production that our linebackers have. Obviously, you lose Kyle Lewis, you lose a lot of production there. But when Kyle got here, it wasn't like that. So these guys will develop. I'm really excited about those 2 guys and how they're going to fit into, that puzzle at the linebacker spot. And we'll have a lot more depth at linebacker, I think, this year than we had last year. Last year, we got banged up early with Jeremiah Marshall being hurt early in camp. So our depth at linebacker will be much better. And again, our linebackers are always going to be productive. I don't care who you put in there. We're going to be productive, make plays based on the structure and our scheme.
You mentioned the depth. You like the depth in all the groups. Is there a group through the portal or recruiting where you've really taken a step, or there's position room where you feel like you've greatly improved?
Not really. I mean, the key is to be strong at all positions. And I think when we're taking a guy, like Natino's been outstanding at left tackle, before the pads came on. I haven't watched tape today. So we're excited about him as well. But again, I'm excited about all those guys because we brought them in for a reason. We didn't bring them in to sit on the bench. So we expect all those guys to come in and play for us and make an impact.
2 leading receivers from last year move on to different things, bringing more through the portal. Who internally are you adding on to take steps forward?
Obviously, Blue is back, but like TK Kinsler, he's special. He does a great job. I don't have a list in front of me. I'm trying to think who walked out there, but I think that receiver room is as talented as it's been since we've been here. We've got a bunch of guys. Cam Sapp, a guy you haven't seen much of, is going to be really good for us. But there's a bunch of guys. I mean, Bryce Yates, another guy that's going to step up, make a lot of plays. CJ Lee's back. Matter of fact, in 2 minutes, he had a touchdown catch at the end of that drive with the ones. CJ's playing fast, and like I said, had a great catch. So we've got a lot of guys that can go in and play at that spot, and I'm excited about what we have there.
Several of the assistant coaches you just hired are former coordinators themselves. Just from that aspect and in general, just how has it been integrating them over the last several months?
It's been great. I mean, obviously Harlan Barnett has been a coordinator and interim head coach at Michigan State, and he's outstanding. Had a long lasting relationship. He sat right next to me in the press box for 11 seasons. So, integrate him. He's already integrated. He's been integrated for years. So he's right there. I mean, Joe Bowen was with Harlan Barnett at Michigan State as well. Harlan didn't know we were going to hire him. But I've known Joe for a while from his Miami, Ohio days. Hell of a coach. And then Brent Davis, obviously, with coordinator experience that, on the offense. I mean, he brings, just a fresh look at the O-line, and he'll work with tackles and tight ends just to give us an extra guy because he's been a coordinator and an offensive line coach. So I guarantee our tight ends will be blocking better than they have in the past as well, not just running routes and catching passes. And obviously Mike Prefer, who's got a ton of experience, in the National Football League and obviously college football as well. But he's done an outstanding job of being integrated. Again, I've known him for many years from our days sleeping back on the floor in Husky Stadium before our families got there.
Pat, you brought in Joe Bowen to serve not only as a linebackers coach but run game coordinator too. Why did you want to add a run game coordinator title this year?
So I could get him here. He was a defense coordinator up at Buffalo, so I thought just a good way of getting guys there. I've really never had a run game coordinator. I mean, Corey Sanders is our defense coordinator. Joe's really smart. He'll be able to coordinate that up, just another little nugget to say, hey, come to Pitt.
It was almost entirely new special teams unit. What have you liked from what you've seen so far?
Say it again. I'm sorry.
You have an almost entirely new special teams
Yeah.
unit. Basically, everything
Yeah.
almost new. What What have you liked from those guys?
Yeah, I mean, Justin Schmidt at center. I mean, all those guys have worked real hard. And again, while we're on the road recruiting, the one big critical thing we did was split up the tight end special teams coordinator. So we really have 11 assistant coaches as opposed to 10 because we can have unlimited coaches. So I thank Alan Green for giving me that opportunity to split that spot up and get 2 guys in here. But while we were on the road recruiting in January, he was in here, just communicating, talking with those guys, getting them to go out on the field and do drills. So they're way ahead of where they would have been. But I'm excited about the turnover there. Obviously, with Junko graduating, we got a new punting situation, and we got 2 really good kickers that probably just as good or better than what we had a year ago.
What do you hope to see out of Mason in these next 12 practices?
Number one is just making smart decisions, which he did today. I mean, there's no turnovers today. I don't think there was a turnover on offense, but we've got to improve as far as just giving the ball away. I mean, just having a quarterback for 2 years in a row is going to be, it's going to be really nice. I think Coach Bell going in his 3rd season as offense coordinator will be critical. The last time I had a 3-year coordinator, we won an ACC championship in 21. So I think 3 is a charm. And, I want to see him operate the offense. I mean, I think he's so much smarter than he was a year ago. Matter of fact, I was looking for some cut-ups. From last summer camp of just our tempo today. And I was flipping it. I wanted to have some plays of Mason in there instead of, any other quarterback that's not with us at this point. And, one of the plays, as I went through there, like the first play popped up was Mason throwing a pick 6. I'm like, well, that's not a good one. We're not going to show that one today. So just, his progression, year 2, is going to be critical. And he's so smart. And he works at it so hard. I don't know if there's anybody that works at it as much as he does. So we're going to see the mental and the physical part of it get a lot better, without a doubt. He's special.
And how about his off-field, his off-season leadership? How have you seen that develop here over the last few months?
I think it's been really good. And he was a great leader for us last year. I should say a good leader, not a great leader, because he was just worried about being the quarterback, right? I mean, just doing his job. But there was one time out there in the middle of February on the field, Stack was screaming at him, weren't real happy. He brought him up at the end. I haven't seen a quarterback lead like that or a leader lead like that for a long time. So leaders are hard to get. He's a natural leader, so he knows he's the guy. We got to keep him healthy and keep him going.
I don't think we talked to you since the decision to close off a portion of the stadium for games. Just your thoughts on that, how it affect the team and just any other thoughts you have there?
Yeah, I mean, I had one player come up to me and say, Coach, what are we doing? I don't think anybody really cares. I think it's going to improve the energy maybe in that stadium. I think we had the 4th or 5th largest capacity last year in the ACC, averaging 51,000. But it surely doesn't look like that in the stadium. I want 51 to look like 51. Obviously those highlighted seats, those yellow seats, make it look like that. But I just think moving everybody down is going to feel a lot better. Do I love it? No. Did I like it 10 years ago when someone mentioned it? Not really. But I think change is good, whether it's a new coordinator or a new idea, and I think it will improve what that place looks like. The attendance isn't going to go down. It's just moving them closer to the field, be a better experience for the players and the fans, I think.
Which freshmen have kind of jumped out to you early?
Freshmen, Tony Fortney at safety, Marcus Jennings at linebacker. Those are 2 young guys that have stepped up, a lot. Joshua Pittman, a young defensive end that's come in. He just seems like he's 22 years old right now. Those are 3 guys there. Offensively, O-line, probably nobody at this point. Running back, I don't even know if we have a freshman running back in. Do we have a freshman running back in right now? I don't think so. You don't even know. Receiver-wise, we have 3 young guys. Dylan Wester's been good, and then Corey Daly, and Angelo Renda, both at quarterback. They both are operating the offense the way we want it. They're smart. Corey Daly's got a gun. If you guys didn't watch it today, just watch him throw it. Like, he spins it really hard. He's got a great arm, and Angelo can run. So we got some different guys in there with different tools that I'm excited to watch.
What expectations do you have for Holden, the Texas State transfer quarterback?
Expect him to, go in there and compete. I think he's talented. I mean, you watch him throw the ball today. Did anybody watch him throw it? You guys watch him? I mean, he is smooth. He's smart. I talked to the coach down there, GJ Kinney down at Texas State when we decided to bring him up for a visit, and he raved about him. And I just think his maturity, I think he's a leader, and I think he's got a ton of talent. I really do. I can't wait to see how he progresses and gets in scrimmages when we start to compete and the pressure's on, because he hasn't got a bunch of snaps through his career for whatever crazy reason. I wasn't around. But I just think Cade Bell put his hands on him and mold him into a great player.
All good?
Good. All right. Have a great one.
Braylon, how does it feel like all of a sudden being an old guy and the most experienced guy, I guess, in the
It kind of doesn't even really feel like it, to be honest. Everything, it's just very a quick change, and things like that. And then the young guys are helping me feel a little younger, so that's pretty nice.
How, if at all, does your role change because of you being one of the experienced guys in that room?
Just taking on the more leader role, trying to be more vocal, and just leading by example, getting here much earlier, things like that, so they can see, so that when they're at my age, my years and stuff like that, that they're on that same track that I am, trying to be the best they can become.
Do you enjoy that role?
Oh yeah, I definitely do. It's nice to see that, when I help out one of the younger freshmen and they go out there and succeed, it's good to see that my helping is getting them on the right track.
It's crazy to think that you were that guy not that long ago.
Yeah, it quite honestly is. I remember like it was yesterday that I was out there on my first spring, fresh out of high school, asking Shane Simon what the play call was and things like that, so it's wild.
Braylon, the two transfers you guys brought in, Alex Sanford, DeMarco Ward, just throughout winter workouts and now getting to spring, just what do you feel like they bring to the team? How's it been getting to know them?
I love them. They're great guys. Just great people. Great people to be around, things like that. I think they're gonna bring a lot of violence and tenacity that we need. Just give us a extra edge to push us to the next level. So I think they're definitely gonna bring us some great things.
Really, what are you emphasizing for yourself and for your group in spring?
Just being more violent. I think that a lot of times in the run game and things like that, I think where we try to play with a little bit too much finesse, where I think in our game we could be a lot more violent and then just not leaving plays out there, missed tackles here and there, we're not bringing our feet and things like that, and just finishing plays and being all together as a defense, things like that.
How has the transition been from going from Coach Manilak to now Coach Bowen?
It's been great. All love to Coach Manilak. I hope he's doing very good over there at UConn. But Bowen, he's bringing a lot. It's a different coaching. They have different keys to making linebackers. And Bowen, I think, is bringing a lot of good things to the room that we need. So we can play more violent and things like that.
What are some of the keys that maybe you've noticed from Coach Bowen so far?
He knows a lot about football. He lives and dies by this game. He's very good with his hands, teaching us about hand placements, when to do certain moves and things like that, and then just teaching us all around just ball knowledge, with certain schemes and things like that, when time, yards, and things like that. He's teaching us a lot.
Is it much different with Corey as defensive coordinator, or is it?
Not really that much. It's just a little bit more coverage changes and things like that. I think that it's changes, like Deuce said, the last one, change is always good, and I think that we're just going to keep rising as a defense, and things like that.
Well, you still got to play the mic most of this year?
No, right now I'm playing outside, and we move some other guys inside, but wherever the team needs me, I'm ready to go. So.
Really, how nice is it to have Jeremiah back in the mix? Because I know you guys were going back and forth last year.
Yeah, no, it's very nice, just see him out there. I've seen him on the sideline, with his shoulder for a long time. So, it's great to see him out there. And it's just nice because he's a very much of a leader, what I'm saying? Since he was a young guy, he came in as a guy that's going to voice his opinion. He's going to tell somebody when to step it up or tell somebody, chill out, it's not that serious. So.
Why do you think transfers have fit in so well quickly with this team will go?
I just think our program, I feel like our team is one of the closest teams, in the nation. So I think that just really helps, them seeing how open and, carefree we are around each other and, how caring we are for each other. I think it makes them easier for them to be themselves around us.
Did you get to meet some of those guys when they come on visits and things like that to sort of see if they would fit in?
Yeah, just very briefly, just a quick introduction. Everybody that I've met, them two guys down there, I knew they would be great fits from the jump. So.
You mentioned moving back to the outside. Is that more of a natural fit for you?
Yes, I believe so. Just from my body type, but I think it's a lot more. There's a lot more there for me to be able to make a play. You know what I'm saying? So, a lot of coverage things too.
Raylan, how big of a year do you think this could be for Cam Lindsey?
Oh, I think this is going to be his breakout year. I think this is going to be the year that he's going to put a stamp to the world that, that this is his name is something to remember, So I think this is going to be one of his biggest years of college football. So.
Raylan, what's it like for you to see Kyle go through combine drills and stuff?
I mean, it's amazing, and I'm very proud of him myself. I was sitting there shaking while he's running the 40. I was nervous with him. Well, not even that he was nervous, but it's amazing to see that a guy that I grew up with, throughout this college process, that we worked out together. That was just one of my best friends. To see him out there living his dreams and things like that is very nice. And I'm gonna meet him up there. So that's the plan.
Good. Raylan,
Thank you guys.
As the coach mentioned that last year you were just trying to be a quarterback, learn how to play college football. This year, do you feel more confident in yourself as a leader this year after starting the year?
Absolutely. I think that was one of my biggest things coming into this offseason was, just trying to be the leader and, kind of try and step into that role and, grow into that mold of taking that next step as a quarterback. I think, there were things that we did well as an offense last year and, I think we could have taken it to a next step if we had more of that leader at the quarterback position, and I think that was on me. And I think as a freshman, that's a tough thing to do, but that comes with the job description. And so I think taking that next step this year is going to be very pivotal to having a successful season.
Mason, what makes a good leader? What are some of the qualities you feel like you?
I think the biggest thing for me is, just leading by example. I try to be as vocal as I possibly can, but, I think guys respond a lot better to when, you say things and you're trying to get them to do things for you. But then there are some guys that'll do that, but don't do that and don't reciprocate that. You know what I mean? I think that's the biggest thing, having to, kind of setting that standard and, having those guys kind of see that, visually instead of, just me telling them to do it. I think that's the biggest thing for me. And then also vocally, I think just trying to jump guys and push guys to be better. I got to push myself to be better too. But, we're only as successful as our weakest link. And, I think just pushing each other to be better every day, and it starts with me. And so, I think that's the biggest thing for us, for sure.
Is there anything you did in the off season to kind of grow that aspect of the game, whether it was, talking to veterans or anything like that?
Yeah, I think, talking to some of the returning guys, some of the older receivers like CJ and Blue. And then, I also think just having that offseason of knowing that, this is my team and, I'm the quarterback going into the season. I didn't have that last year, just the freshmen coming in and kind of trying to step into my role. I think trying to take that next step has been helpful with those guys because, they've pushed me to do that too. And, they've been doing a great job of that. But, they also have my back and know that I can do it at this level. And so, they trust me. And, when I can get on them and they don't jaw back, they just do it. I think that's such a great thing for us to be successful.
Jason, the wide receiver room. The wide receiver room looks a bit different from last season. What have your impressions of that group been early, and who do you see jumping out?
Very excited about this group. I think we had a great group last year, but I think we can take it to new lengths this year. I think some of the younger guys are stepping up and playing really well. You think of guys like Bryce Yates, who he got a little action last year, but really stepping into a bigger role. Guys like Tony Kinsler and Cam Sapp, a bunch of other young guys. They also like Malik, coming in from Western, he's going to do a great job. And some of the freshmen too. I think those guys have been really, really they've been standing out so so far this offseason. And, obviously, we didn't have CJ a lot last year, so it's great to have him back. He's such a pivotal part of our offense. He's our oldest guy, too, so, he's really the leader in that room. And I think that's going to help us a lot, just to be successful and, push the other guys as well. Also bringing Blue back, we're excited. It's going to be a really great group.
Mason, what do you hope to see out of yourself in these next 12 practices?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think Coach Bell and Coach Jacob Floyd and I talk a lot about, just being a chain mover and, being a very efficient quarterback. I think that was part of the problem of, towards the end of last year, just trying to do a little bit too much at times. And, I think just playing efficient football and, just being a quarterback and not just throwing the football, not just kind of trying to go out there and make plays, just understanding what the defense is doing, take what they're giving us. And, I think just being a very efficient quarterback is my biggest thing coming into this offseason and, during spring ball. And, I think the guys around us are going to really help me take that next step too. I think we got a really great group. Boosie's second year, he's going to be electric. We're really excited about him as well. So, I think, with the pieces around me, I think we're going to have a really great offseason for sure.
Over the last 2 months, how much did you guys reflect on the way things ended last year, losing 3 of the last 4 games?
That's a great question too. I think we reflected a decent amount. Just how the bowl game went. That was really disappointing for us. I think it starts with me and everybody kind of played the role of why we were unsuccessful in that game. But, we tried not to dwell on that so much. I think you can only control what you can control in the future, and that's something that we can learn from for sure. But we got a new group and we got a great group of guys here, and I think just taking what we did wrong in that game and just using that to get better this offseason, I think is going to be a big step for us. Like I said, just not dwelling on that because there's only so much we can control now. You just keep taking that steps in front of you and get better, and I think we're doing that for sure.
Mason, in the month or so after the bowl till when you announced you'd be coming back to Pitt, just what was kind of going through your head during that span, and what was it about Pitt and this program that made you come back?
Yeah, I think that month I was just that was kind of just time for me to debrief and reflect, like he said, reflect on the season, all that kind of stuff. But I think just what brought me back is the relationships. There was no doubt in my mind that I wanted to be here, and what I've built with Coach Bell and Coach Dews, honestly, just the rest of the guys on the team. I think we have a really great group here, like a really great group, and I'm really excited for what we can show. And I think that was the biggest thing for me is I'm excited for what we can do here. I'm excited to bring a championship to Pitt. I wholeheartedly believe that we can do that. And, we're going to get that done.
How much do you and Kate now sort of speak the same language? Not finish each other's sentences, but how sort of like tuned in are you?
Absolutely, all the time. And I think that's something. Just the amount of time that we've spent around each other, and just how close we've gotten over the past year. Even before that, when I was getting recruited by him, and I just think that he's done such a great job of helping me out, and just simplifying things for me at times. But coming into this offseason, I think we're looking to take that next step, and so just trying to gain as much knowledge from him as I possibly can is so essential for us to be successful. I think, like I said, just the guys around us too. I think they do a really great job, and I think him and I really see eye to eye, like you said. I think that's what makes us so special as well.
Mason, how would you describe those conversations? Are they pretty honest? Like, how would you guys interact?
Absolutely. I think that's Coach Bell's biggest thing is, just honesty. And, there's times where you're not going to like what he's saying. There's going to be times where it's a little bit harsh, but, it's what you need to hear. And, I think that's the best thing for me is, just hearing what he thinks and, getting that honest feedback from him is just only going to make me better. And, I don't want him to sugarcoat it. If I throw a ball that looks like crap, tell me about it, and we'll talk about it and we'll fix it, and, we'll get better from it. And I think that's the biggest thing with the relationship that him and I have is we can say those things to each other and not get our feelings hurt. We have the best intentions behind it, and we want to move on and get better.
What is a guy like Holden who's been around college football for a while added to?
He's great. Holden and I really have a great relationship already, and it's great to have that veteran in our room because I feel like we have a really young group in the quarterback room. So he kind of brings that veteran piece, like you said, and he's always just trying to give us that wisdom that he's gained over the years. He's been to a couple places, and he's a really talented quarterback as well. He's really done a great job of just helping us out, but also he's done a great job of picking up the offense too. I was talking about this with Coach Floyd the other day. He does a really great job of understanding where we want to go with the football and just understanding concepts, all this kind of stuff. So I think him being able to pick up on that early too is just going to help the young guys be better as far as, just learning and gaining knowledge of the offense. And I think he's really done a great job with that. And he helps me out a lot too. There are things that, I may not see that he sees, and we talk about it, and, we fix it and be better and help each other out. So.
You mentioned the young guys in the room. You were in those shoes this time last year, like Angelo and Corey. I mean, what have they brought to the table, and just how much are they starting to push you and hold in so far?
Absolutely. I think they've really done a great job of, coming in and putting in work to try and pick up on the offense. It's not easy to learn this offense, and they're doing everything that they can to better themselves, and I think that's bettering us as well. They're both really talented throwers of the football, and then you also just really talented quarterbacks. And so I think just having those guys there to push us and help us be better is going to be really, really pivotal for us to be better players. And I'm trying to push myself as much as I can, but it's great to have those guys to push me to be better as well, and they've done a really great job so far.
How's your relationship been like with the O-line, and how those guys are looking this year?
Really great. Those guys have done a really great job this offseason of just pushing each other. Some of those guys, it's some of their last seasons, and so that this is the last go for them, and they're going all out, and I love it. I think they've really done a great job. Pushing each other in the weight room and pushing each other when we just do stuff together. And I think we've built a really great relationship off the field as well. And I think that's going to only help us in the long run. And just being able to have each other's backs and trust each other and to go out and make plays. I think that's going to be such a big thing for our success this year.
Not football related, but how was the floor plunge, and did Olivia actually forget to click record?
Oh, it was a great time. That was so cool for us to be able to do. And I didn't know Olivia and I were going to be going together, but that's when we got there. They said that they wanted us to jump in together, and it was actually me. I forgot to hit record, and so I kind of threw her under the bus a little bit, just playing around. But no, it was great. It's great for the community, and we had a lot of guys there too, which I think is awesome. We had a lot of football players that were able to attend that, and I think that's so cool for the city, and we're excited to do a lot of other things like that as well.
Good. Mason.
Awesome. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you. Have a good one.